Welcome to Mosaic. I'm your host, Susan Schulman-Pertnoy. Mosaic is Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County's weekly news magazine, exploring the most critical issues facing Jews here and around the world. Today, we're sitting down with Professor David Silberklang of Israel's Yad Vashem Holocaust Remembrance Center. We're discussing the role education plays in keeping alive the memory of the Holocaust. We'll be right back with Mosaic.
You are the book that lights the spark and the hand that passes the torch, the fuel that powers the change that betters the world, across town, across oceans, the hand that soothes the spirit that survived the unthinkable. You are there in the darkest of times to strengthen our community.
Greek, moving and storage. Your superhero movers.
Moving horror story. Think it's a good idea for your friends to show up at Pizza and Sleazy Beer to help you hold everything hostage until you pay a higher fee.
As a former police officer, I've heard all of the moving horror stories. But you can trust me and my pros, and we'll have you saying, Opa! Call Star Greek.
Good Greek, moving and storage. Your superhero movers.
Did you know that Mosaic is 100% supported by community members like you? Contribute now to empower us to keep bringing Mosaic to our community. Email mosaic@jewishpalmbeach.org or call 561-242-6646 to let us know that we can count on your support. Special thanks goes to these generous individuals and corporate partners who have supported the show this season.
Picture living aboard a luxury cruise ship with first-class service and the best amenities 24/7. Life at Tradition is just like a cruise ship that doesn't leave port. With more fabulous food, more fun with friends and family, a more fulfilling future, more care when you need it, and more freedom when you don't. Our elegant assisted living residences provide so much more, so you can make the most of every day. Rent an apartment at Morse Life and see how much more life can be.
Welcome to Mosaic, Dr. Silberklang.
Nice to be here.
I would love you to talk about Yad Vashem. We have a wide range of an audience, and some of them have not been to Israel, so they don't know what it's about. And then also tell us the role you play there.
Okay. Yad Vashem is Israel's national memorial to the Holocaust, and it's a large institution, actually physically 45 acres it covers, and on the outskirts of Jerusalem, in western Jerusalem. It was created by an act of the Knesset in 1953 and has a number of functions, mainly commemoration, and one of the main parts of that is our Museum of the History of the Holocaust. We have a research institute, which is what I'm part of. I'm senior historian in our research institute. We have a major archive with 210 million pages of documentation that grows by several million every year. We have a library, largest of its kind in the world, with about 175,000 books and several million pages of journals from the period. And we have a major education branch that does a lot of education with young people of all ages, but also trains teachers from all over the world. We have 70 teacher training courses every year with people from numerous countries, of course Israel, but numerous countries from all over. And that's, in a nutshell, who we are and what we do.
You also honor the righteous of the nations, which are the non-Jewish people that helped hide and save Jewish lives during the Holocaust. Why is that so significant?
That's actually written in Yad Vashem's law. The law specified broad things that Yad Vashem is supposed to do that I was just talking about. And one of them is to find a way to honor those people who were not Jewish, who risked their lives or their well-being in order to try to rescue Jews. And we honor the effort. There are people we honor who we found out their stories who paid with their lives, and maybe the Jews they were trying to rescue were killed too, but we honor the effort of trying to rescue. And the point here is that these are people who, in a sense, were not obligated. I mean, any human being is obligated to help another human being, but we would think that, if it's your own people, your own family, you have a sense of obligation. These are people who were often rescuing those they didn't even know. but felt this human obligation to try to rescue. And that's why it's so important to honor them. And we've so far found, since we began the program in late 1962, we've found more than 27,500 so far. There are certainly many more that we haven't yet found, but every year another few hundred are honored. Still to this day, we're finding new stories.
You have ceremonies bringing them there and honoring them?
Well, most of the people are no longer alive.
Right.
Their descendants, either at Yad Vashem or through the Israeli embassy in their own country. If they can't travel, we can't organize it in Yad Vashem, then we'll have a ceremony with people in their own country as well. And we try to bring the people who were rescued or their family, children, grandchildren, whatever, who will come and be part of the ceremony as well.
Why do you think that's so important?
They are important to each other, and they're a message to the world. And I mean, the Holocaust is a dark subject. It's terrible. It's the collapse of humanity. It's a rupture in history, and these people are the ones who kind of hold up the light that that
there is hope.
There is hope. And one of the most important things, and this is what research about the righteous has shown, is that most of these people were just ordinary folks. Some of them were leaders of their communities, priests, bishops, or political leaders or whatever, certainly. But most of them were just ordinary folks. And it also then shows us that ordinary folks with the ordinary quirks and foibles of and problems that anybody might have, but ordinary folks can make a difference, as they did. And that's an important lesson to draw from them.
It really is. Excuse me. Tell us also about how Yad Vashem teaches people about the Jews who risked their lives to save each other.
Now, of course, there were many cases of Jews who tried to help other Jews. There were also cases where they didn't. But we have many cases, whether it's partisans or individuals pulling other people out of wherever they were, helping them hide. I was just reading an article the other day that we're going to be publishing in our scholarly journal in a few months about Jews in Warsaw who had, quote unquote, the right looks. They're blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and spoke Polish unaccented, and were hiding, and they were pulling Jews out of the Warsaw Ghetto and hiding them too. And how did they do that, and how did that operate? And people who were doing this not for any reward, but just trying to help other Jews. We have lots of stories like that, and we try to include that in things that we teach, in curricula that we pass on to schools and other teachers, things that we publish, like this article that we're publishing, books that we publish, conferences we have. It's an important subject because there are lessons to be learned about responsibility that then existed, that people felt for each other, and also, of course, as looking ahead, in societies. People need to feel responsible for others in their society, even if it's not someone you know.
Well, no, that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, our federation has an active Jewish Community Relations Council, which forges deep relationships with people of other faiths and cultures. Why is it vital to have the community at large buy in and help fight anti-Semitism and not just the Jewish community?
Anti-Semitism undermines society. It doesn't just attack Jews. It undermines society. And that's one of the things that some leaders, community leaders, world leaders have recognized, that if they say, oh, well, it's the Jews, it's somebody else, in the end, it's going to destroy you too. And that's why it's important to fight it. Anti-Semitism is one of the diseases of societies and has become part of many modern societies. And if you let it spread, it's like spreading a cancer. And you can't just say, well, it's a disease that somebody else has. So I think it's critical. And of course, anti-Semitism is connected to other prejudices and all that. That's clear. But first and foremost, if you fight that, look where it led in the past. If you fight that, then you protect your own society through that struggle. And I think that's critical. It's not a Jewish issue. Anti-Semitism is a disease of other people.
It really is. We have to take our first break. We'll be right back after this brief message. The Holocaust is likely the most documented genocide in history. Coming up, we'll find out why some people are still denying it happened.
You are the book that lights the spark and the hand that passes the torch, the fuel that powers the change that betters the world, across town, across oceans, the hand that soothes the spirit that survived the unthinkable. You are there in the darkest of times to strengthen our community.
Eat, drink, and enjoy Shabbat services at Temple Bethel's Friday night happenings. Cocktail reception and kosher dinner at 5:30, followed by our creative, musically driven Shabbat service. Traditional to progressive, the food and music change every Friday, and you'll want to stay for complimentary dessert.
Plan to spend the whole evening here, and you'll walk away and you'll say, wow, we're coming back next week. Welcome. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat services at Temple Bethel, open to everyone. Join us every Friday night.
Good Greek, moving and storage. Your superhero movers.
More moving horror stories. Slick salesmen make you a great deal. Sleazy movers hold everything hostage until you pay a higher fee.
As a former police officer, I've heard all of the moving horror stories. But you can trust me and my pros, and we'll have you saying, call Star Greek.
Good Greek, moving and storage. Your superhero movers.
We're back talking with Dr. Silberklang about anti-Semitism in the Holocaust. I recently interviewed Deborah Lipstadt, a historian and author, about the Holocaust, and she talks about the Holocaust being one of the most, if not the most, well-documented genocides in history. So why then are there Holocaust deniers?
Well, and of course she's written a very important book about the subject. Holocaust deniers are not people who are seriously looking at history and trying to understand it. Holocaust deniers are generally people who have a political agenda, and they come to deny the Holocaust as a tool to achieve their political agenda. And when they're Holocaust deniers from the far right, as the person who sued her and lost, David Irving, then basically they're people who are believers in Nazism, who want to rehabilitate the Nazis. After all, if the Nazis are people who committed genocide, then it's, you don't want to be affiliated with them. But if you can pretend that they never really did it, and it's just an invention of those nasty Jews, then you achieve a number of things. You undermine what in some people's eyes is the legitimacy of the state of Israel, although Israel's not there because of the Holocaust, but in some people's minds that's true. You undermine the Jews' honesty, legitimacy in the world, and you rehabilitate the Nazis. So people who want to accomplish that are out there to rehabilitate the people who committed genocide. And that is a threat to the world.
So how do we meet these challenges? What do you do at Yad Vashem to combat this?
Well, we first of all teach a great deal about denial, and her book is one of the sources, but there are other sources. We use their materials to teach about it. What we don't do, and what she also doesn't do, is directly engage them in a debate, because I don't debate if history happened. I won't debate somebody who denies that there's a tree outside the window over there. That's nonsense. And I won't get into that. But I will work to delegitimize them. And that is what we try to teach, and try to provide tools to teachers, students, anyone who's interested, tools to deal with those deniers and delegitimize them in that market of ideas.
Yad Vashem recently held a ceremony commemorating Israel's Holocaust remembrance, as well as the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. How important was it for all these world leaders to attend?
This event was attended by 47, if I remember the number correctly, nearly 50 leaders of countries, presidents and prime ministers and kings and queens and deputy vice presidents, like Vice President Pence was there. And it was the largest such convocation of world leaders in Israel ever.
Wow.
And far more came than anyone anticipated. And that was an expression of, I think, two things. First of all, the commitment of these people and the names of their countries and their societies to remembering the Holocaust, teaching it, and that, of course, means trying to prevent such things from happening again. After all, once the Holocaust happened, it sets a precedent. And the next time around, there should never be a next time, but if something like that happens again, it doesn't have to be Germans and Jews, right? Anybody can say, oh, look what the Germans did, I'll do it to these guys. So it's a commitment to study it and to try to prevent such things from happening again. But the other theme that was there was the fight against anti-Semitism. There's been a spike in anti-Semitism in the last few years all over the world, and that spike in anti-Semitism is not just words, but people who feel that they have now legitimacy and license and entitlement to go and attack Jews physically. And there have been attacks on Jews physically, and there have been attempted murders, and there have been murders that have happened. And they've happened not only by one particular group in society or another particular group in society. It's cutting across different kinds of groups in society. And that's very frightening, and it's very worrisome, and that undermines the societies in which these things are happening. And these world leaders came together to express their commitment that they will try to fight anti-Semitism. And that's encouraging, because it means that in that fight, we're not alone.
Well, there was a person it was a glaring person that was missing, and that was the Prime Minister of Poland.
The President of Poland, yeah.
Oh, the President.
Yeah, Andrzej Duda.
Do you want to talk about that
It's
for a second?
unfortunate that he didn't come. Now, the reason that he gave for not coming is that he wasn't given a place to speak. There were 10 speeches. There were, in the end, 47 world leaders, but 10 of them spoke, and all the leaders knew what the program was for months and months and months. This is not planned from today to tomorrow. And Andrzej Duda knew what it was. And the speakers, the European speakers who spoke, were the representatives of the 4 major allies that were recognized as the major allies by themselves during the war. And that was representative of the United States, Vice President, representative of the UK, Prince Charles, representative of France, the President of France, and the representative of Russia as the continuer of the Soviet Union. And they're the ones who represented those leaders. Duda wanted to speak because he was concerned about what Putin would say. Because Putin, of course, has come out recently in the last few months with all sorts of comments that historically are nonsense. Poland is the reason that the war began, and Poland caused the war. That's nonsense. They didn't. But he wanted to speak in that. So he was offered to speak at the President's house the night before. He declined. It's unfortunate.
We need to take our final break. We'll be
Okay.
right back after this brief message. Coming up, how the Holocaust Remembrance Center plays an active role in educating the world.
Morse Life Memory Care is making a difference in the lives of our residents with innovative programs that offer them a more rewarding future. Our goal is to give our residents more time. Time for programs that help cognition, for favorite foods in our open kitchen any time of day, for fun with new friends, and time for family, free from care and worry. Most importantly, for the compassion and dignity they deserve.
Did you know that Mosaic is 100% supported by community members like you? Contribute now to empower us to keep bringing Mosaic to our community. Email mosaic@jewishpalmbeach.org or call 561-242-6646 to let us know that we can count on your support.
What's the best kept secret in new cars? It's that you can get a brand new Mini at Bremen Mini Palm Beach for under $21,000, which includes free maintenance for 3 years. No kidding.
Plus, free membership to the Fun Mini Club of South Florida for road trips and autocross, and even more with Club Room social events. Mini is more than just driving. It's about having fun with the Bremen Mini community. Learn about Bremen Mini at BremenMini.com. Minis for under $21,000, free maintenance, Mini Club, and Club Bremen benefits. It's a no-brainer. Bremen Mini is the right choice.
We're back with Dr. Silberklang. I have a startling statistic. The Claims Commission has stated that 66% of millennials do not even know that Auschwitz happened. Mm-hmm. How can we deal with this?
Well, first of all, that's a sign that all of our efforts at education have had some limited success. And I think we need to build on that success, because education about the Holocaust is even if it doesn't always succeed completely, is really our main tool to prevent such things from happening again. Because if you don't know what happened in the past, then you really are exposing yourself to such things happening again. If you know what happened and know why it happened and know why it's an evil thing, then hopefully we can try to collectively prevent it from happening again. So I think we need to beef up the education. there are clearly faults in the education. It's not taught in every state in the United States. It's not taught in every country in the world. And in some places where it's taught in a very limited way. What are they teaching, actually? Some places teach it seriously, but other places don't. And I think that that's our route, and we have to figure out how to teach it well enough so that it penetrates, it registers with students. And particularly, I would argue, if we're teaching in some detail, in high schools, because high school students are still in their mandatory education, but they're also old enough to understand. A 10-year-old might not understand, but a high school student can understand, and that's where we have to go.
Do you find it surprising when you come to the States about how little people know about the Holocaust? How disturbing is this to you?
It's very disturbing. I mean, I've been dealing with this subject since I was in high school. I've been researching the subject since I was in college, and I'm not a young guy. So I would have thought that by now, people would know more. But it's not a totally bleak picture. I mean, there are many countries that teach at least something about the Holocaust as something that's mandated in their educational curricula. And there are states in the United States that have mandated it as well. And there are many good teachers and many good scholars out there working on the subject. So I know that we have a community of people who care and want to teach it. So I look at that as the kind of half-full cup.
Well, that's good. Florida schools has a mandate to teach the Holocaust, but there's inconsistencies throughout the state. Some people get an intensive education, and others get basically nothing. So what do you see as the most effective ways to implement it?
We've got to have classes that are not just World War II and the Holocaust happened and the Germans and their allies killed 6 million Jews. That's insufficient. That's kind of the first sentence and an introduction. They really need to have a program that spends a serious amount of time in the classroom. And yes, that might come at the expense of something else. Figure that out in the curriculum. But they've got to, if we don't teach that kind of stuff, then we risk creating what one of my teachers many years ago called Franklin Littell, the danger of creating technologically competent barbarians. That's not what we want to create. You don't want to just teach people tools. Here's how to add and subtract, and here's how to read, and technical tools. The technical tools without studying humanity and the failures of humanity highlighted here risk that. So I think we have to really teach deeply on the subject and not just a passing statement.
So how do you train educators to teach the subject?
Intensively. Our courses on teaching the Holocaust that reach teachers in dozens of countries around the world. They come to Yad Vashem. Sometimes we send our educators to them to do it. These are generally 2-week intensive courses on the Holocaust and on tools for teaching the Holocaust, where we're not only telling them here's tools, we're listening to what they do. Because we also have to adapt the tools to different countries, different societies. Not everyone studies exactly the same way. So we have a dialogue with them, but it's intensive. They have their classes from 8:30 in the morning until 5 or 6 at night, non-stop every day for 2 weeks. And they come away with a great deal of information and tools. And hopefully we're reaching somebody there.
There's also been a recent Pew study that says the impact of the Holocaust museums and memorials on combating anti-Semitism is very effective. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm glad to see that in the Pew study. I think that's one of the goals of Yad Vashem and all of our colleagues and partners all over the world, in the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, and the Imperial War Museum, and in Auschwitz itself, and on. We're all working together and sharing information and sharing insights and tools. So that's encouraging, and that's part of the education. The education's not just formal; that's informal education, right? And I think that's we've learned a great deal. Educators have taught us that informal education goes a long way if it's not a one-time thing, but it comes in a context in many different fields. And here's one. So I think
that's true, and I think it is very effective. But that same study shows that U.S. adults know that what the Holocaust is, but they can't give you any details. And I have to just give you an anecdote to that. About an hour and a half ago, I was talking to about a 35-year-old woman. So I said, do you know about the Holocaust? Yes, I know about the Holocaust. I said, do you know how many Jews died? She said, I think between 100 and 150,000. And I said, no, 6 million Jews. I mean, what are we going to do about this?
You know, I don't have all the answers. On the one hand, I can say, you know, things that we've studied when we were kids or in high school and college, how much of that do we remember, you know, 20, 30 years later? And there, you know, we remember some things and there are things you forget. But when there's things that threaten our very lives and our very existence, and that's what the Holocaust is, that's what anti-Semitism is, then we have to find ways to, you know, have follow-up education, continuing education in some way. And there are things that happen like
Creative
that.
education too.
Yeah, but it can't just stop. I studied it in school and that's it. So what do I remember of my high school chemistry if I didn't go on to study chemistry or become a chemist or so on? We can't let it go like that. The world is not going to be threatened if I don't remember the details of a cell, but the world will be threatened if people don't remember the Holocaust.
How does Yad Vashem stay relevant for future generations?
We have a great deal of outreach. We don't just wait for people to come. A lot of this educational activity I was talking about, all the training, a lot of our research workshops, conferences are we reaching out, and other institutions are doing parallel things, and some of them we do together. Some of them are each one on its own, but we go to each other's conferences, go to each other's educational activities. And one thing I've seen is that the interest out there among educators, among people in universities and so on is steady, even a little bit on the rise. I don't see a serious decline. And that's encouraging, that people still see importance in the subject and want to engage in the subject. And they're coming from many different disciplines. It's not just that lots of historians talk to each other. They're coming from literature and psychology and theater and political science, everywhere, whatever you can imagine. They're coming from there, medicine. And that's encouraging because they're all relevant. And together, we might achieve something.
Thank you so much. This has been such an enlightening discussion. We have to end now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Mosaic is brought to you by these generous sponsors and underwriters. Learn how you can support Mosaic by visiting jewishpalmbeach.org/mosaic.